Welcome to The Explainer. In this series, we break down foundational texts to really see how they tick. And today, we are diving right into the very first chapter of the Gospel of Luke. It is just a masterfully structured story that sets the whole stage with these two incredible parallel promises.
All right, so let's get into it. What's so interesting is that the chapter doesn't kick off with a big miracle or anything. Instead, it starts with a promise from the author himself. He's basically saying, hey, I'm going to give you an accurate, well-researched, orderly account of things. It's like he's telling us right from the get-go, look, I've done my homework here.
So yeah, this isn't meant to be just some story. Luke presents it as a really meticulous record for this person named Theophilus, and the whole point is to confirm that what he's been taught is solid. You see what he's doing? Luke's positioning himself as a careful historian, building this foundation of trust before any of the really extraordinary stuff starts to happen. And so, this ordered account of his kicks off with the first of these two parallel stories, and it's all centered on an elderly, righteous couple. The setting? Well, it's the very heart of Jewish worship, the temple in Jerusalem.
So we meet Zechariah and Elizabeth, and the text really goes out of its way to establish their credentials. They're devout, they come from a priestly family, they're described as blameless. But all of this piety is set against this really sharp, personal sorrow. They're childless. And in their culture, that was a huge deal, a source of shame.
Okay, so Zechariah is in the temple performing this incredibly sacred duty. It was like a once-in-a-lifetime honor to offer incense there. And right then, he gets this absolutely stunning message from an angel. It's the angel Gabriel, and he promises this old man not just a son, but a son with a monumental destiny. He's going to be the forerunner, the one who prepares all of Israel for the Lord. But when he's faced with this miracle, how does Zechariah respond? Not with faith, but with doubt. A doubt that's totally rooted in his reality. And you know what? It's a very human reaction, right? He just looks at his situation. He's an old man, his wife is old, and he basically asks for proof. He's like, how can I be sure? Give me a sign. And here's where it gets really interesting. The consequence for that doubt is silence. This first big promise is met with this very human inability to believe, and it results in this deeply symbolic silence. Think about it. The priest, the guy whose whole job is to speak and sing the praises of God, is literally silenced by his own doubt. So he gets his sign, all right, but it's definitely not the one he was asking for. Okay, now watch how Luke, the author, builds on this. Because 6 months later, the very same angel, Gabriel, shows up with another message. It's a very deliberate parallel. But this time, the setting couldn't be more different. We're not in the grand temple in Jerusalem anymore. We're in a humble little town in Galilee. So Gabriel appears to this young woman, Mary, and his greeting is just extraordinary. He doesn't just say, hey Mary, he calls her full of grace, or piena di grazia, which is the famous phrase. And as our sources explain, this isn't just a nice compliment. It's more like a new name, a title that defines her whole being. It means she's someone completely filled with God's loving initiative. And if you thought the promise to Zechariah was big, well, the one to Mary is even greater. You could say it's even more impossible. Her son isn't just going to be a prophet. No, he's going to be a king with an eternal kingdom. The long-awaited Messiah who will sit on King David's throne forever. And this slide, right here, is where the contrast between these two stories just becomes crystal clear. See, Mary also asks a question, but it is fundamentally different from Zacharias. He asked, how can I be sure of this? Which is a question that comes from a place of disbelief, right? But Mary asks, how will this be? She's not questioning if it will happen. She's asking for understanding about the process. It's a question rooted in acceptance. Her final response just captures this difference perfectly. You've got the old, experienced priest in the heart of the Holy Temple, and he meets the impossible with doubt. And then you have this young woman in a basically forgotten town, and she meets it with complete faithful submission. She says yes. So now these two parallel stories, one that started in doubt and one that started in faith, are about to converge. This next scene is so powerful, so pivotal. It's where Luke starts to weave these two narrative threads together.
So Mary travels to visit Elizabeth, and what happens is the two promises and the two unborn children, they physically meet. And the reaction is immediate, it's instinctual. The baby, John, the forerunner, actually leaps in Elizabeth's womb. It's like he recognizes the presence of his Lord, even before he's born.
And then Elizabeth, filled with the Holy Spirit, becomes the very first person in the whole story to say out loud just how significant this all is. She confirms Mary's incredible blessing, and she totally gets it. She understands she's in the presence of, as she says, the mother of my Lord. Mary's response to this is a song, which we now call the Magnificat. And listen, this is not just some personal thank you note. It is a revolutionary theological manifesto. I mean, she sings about a God who is actively turning the world's power structures completely upside down. He's overthrowing the powerful, lifting up the lowly, and fulfilling the promise made way back to Abraham.
All right, so now let's circle back to that first promise. We need to see how Zechariah's long journey of silence finally ends. The story brings us right back to where we started, to see how Gabriel's first message gets fulfilled.
So Elizabeth gives birth, and just as you might expect, a little conflict pops up at the naming ceremony. All the relatives are insisting, hey, you gotta name him Zechariah after his dad, it's tradition. But of course, only the still mute Zechariah can actually resolve this whole thing.
And what he does next is really the ultimate test of his faith and his obedience. He takes a tablet and he writes, his name is John, completely defying tradition. And in that instant, his speech comes back. The silence that started all the way back with his doubt is just broken by this flood of praise. His mouth is opened, and he can finally fulfill his role as a priest.
And just like Mary, Zechariah breaks into his own song of praise, called the Benedictus. First, he blesses God for coming through on his ancient promises, and then he turns to his tiny baby son and prophesies his destiny. He says that John's mission will be to go before the Lord, to prepare his ways, and to give people the knowledge of salvation.
And Zechariah's song ends with this absolutely beautiful and powerful metaphor. He talks about the rising sun that will come from heaven. It's this image of a new dawn, a light that's going to shine on everyone who's been living in darkness and in the shadow of death. It's just a brilliant image of hope. And with that, the chapter wraps up. John, the forerunner, is growing up out in the wilderness, getting stronger in spirit, just waiting for the day he'll be revealed to Israel. He's ready. He's waiting in the wings. His purpose is clear. His birth was miraculous. The stage is now perfectly set for the main event.
So John's purpose is to prepare the way. But for who exactly? And what does it really mean to be a rising sun that shines on the whole world? Luke has just masterfully laid out these two parallel tracks of his story. One is about a priest's doubt that turns into faith, and the other is about a young woman's simple, humble acceptance. Both stories are pointing forward, leaving all of us just waiting, anticipating the arrival of the main character that John was born to introduce.